Oh my
Hello.
God!
Hi.
Technology! Hi!
How are
How
you
you
both?
doing?
How are you, sir?
Good. Congratulations.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yes. Yeah.
How
We
was
got
your
We
wedding?
married
got married
just
late
under the wire.
January, yes.
It's good to see you both.
It's
Good
good
to
to
see
see
you.
you. We're just
Make you a
turning
little
up our
louder.
volume here.
Can you hear me?
Now
Yeah.
we can, yeah.
So, you're in Minneapolis right now?
We are in Minneapolis. I was supposed to have a world premiere of a play here, Emma, at the Guthrie, and that is not well. It's not going up on quite the timeline that we thought, but the Guthrie has graciously let us stay here in housing, and it seems like a bad time to go back to Queens, which is where we live. So we are staying here for a while, thanks to the Guthrie, and
That's
yeah.
And Jason, you were in Syracuse and you had an opening closing of what it sounded like a brilliant production of
It was great. We had a clopening night of Amadeus, and it was really crazy, bittersweet. It was beautiful, and we had 2 previews, 1 performance, closed the same night. We had a wonderful audience. We didn't know if we'd have an audience, but we had wonderful audiences who responsibly distanced themselves, and they filmed it for that opening closing night. Bob Hupp, who runs Syracuse Stage, saw the writing on the wall during tech, and he arranged for the PBS station in Syracuse to come and film it.
Wow.
With 4 cameras, and they put together a beautiful video package, and then people who had tickets to the show were able to get access to watch a webcast. And then up until this past weekend, they were able to sell tickets to the webcast. So a lot of people around the country who would never have gotten to see the show actually have as a result. But
That's awesome.
so it was cool, and the show turned out beautifully. But yeah, I learned all those lines and did it 3 times. And they would like to bring it back to, but it's the state of the theater now. Everybody's trying to see what the next possibility is to like get started again, and what they could do and when, and but everybody's now realizing that this is the timetable is going to be dictated by nature and what we do. So how are you?
Well, I mean, similarly, you're adjusting and in solidarity with other theater makers, and which makes it feel a little less scary because we're all kind of together in this, and
Everybody.
We are all definitely in the same boat. Yeah.
There's a new normal now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we jump into some of these questions? Why don't you both tell us about, just tell me about like your creative journey to now, because you both have had such a wonderful creative life.
Well, I started out as only an actor, and I don't mean only an actor, but I got my degree in acting, and I live in New York City. I went to New York City, and I was working and doing okay, and but I swiftly got very frustrated with the dearth of female-centered narratives that I was auditioning for, and how often I was auditioning to play someone's, like, the protagonist's wife or girlfriend or prostitute. There's some great roles for wives or girlfriends or prostitutes, and especially I really wanted like feminist narratives, specifically feminist narratives, and I especially loved the classics, but that's doubly true in the classics. So around about 2011, I got really frustrated with it because especially I noticed a lot of women around me were dropping out of the business because there wasn't enough work for them. So I thought, well, that's bullshit. And I had been writing some anyway. I had written as my day job. I was a copywriter, so I wrote like stuff for catalogs and stuff. And I had written some short plays, and so I bet my friend Andrews Nichols, who you know, $100 that I could write a new feminist classic, and that I wrote a version of Sense and Sensibility. And then it all just sort of took off. So now I do both acting and playwriting. And I kind of specialize in like feminist version, like highly theatrical adaptations of the classics, but I do new plays as well, as you know, and I still act as well, and that's how I came to it all. The Cliff Notes.
Yeah. Where did you?
My story's exactly the same as her. Just trying to write some feminist classic. No, I was, I've been an actor for a long time. Went to school for theater. Started out, wanted to be a stand-up comedian. That was my kind of where things started for me when I was in high school. And I did do a lot of stand-up at clubs on Long Island, where I grew up, and then in New York City as well. But when I went to school for theater and started to do a lot more classical acting. And for years and years, I didn't, the stand-up thing went away, and then I was doing a lot of Shakespeare and classical theater, but also contemporary theater, but again, mostly stage work. And then those things kind of started to dovetail, because then a few years ago I started writing solo shows for myself. That's kind of, that had become more in vogue, and I found that was a way that I could take the writing side of my life, which had kind of been dormant for a while, and the stand-up side of my life, and kind of fuse it with what I, like with being a dramatic actor. And so I've written a couple of shows that have allowed me to work like that. And then from there, I've also started writing, trying to take a page from this one. I co-wrote an adaptation of Cyrano last year with Brenda Withers, a really fantastic writer, and Kate starred as Roxanne in the world premiere, which I directed. And then I got to play Cyrano this past year at Two River Theater and Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. So I'm writing, I'm directing, and still primarily, acting when, as long as the theaters let me do it and don't close on opening night. Hopefully I'll do a little bit more of all of that sometime soon. So.
So you're just going to keep writing plays for each other to be in?
Yeah, why not, right?
You'll just stay
Someone has your back.
It's good we work well together. Otherwise, wow.
Yeah, thank God.
Thank God.
Someone asked if Andrus paid you that $100.
So I wrote her a check, and I said,
that she could cash.
If I don't do this in whatever it was, 3 or 4 months, even a bad first draft, you can cash it. And at the time, I was super, super, super poor. So if she had cashed it, I wouldn't have been able to like buy food or pay for rent. So she never got to cash it, actually. But it's like my favorite productivity strategy is write a check you do not want cashed. And give it to a friend who's like,
who will take your money
to teach you the lesson. Yeah.
Mine is always, I have to have a deadline. So far, everything I've written, I've literally written with like not like it's due for somebody to read, but a day I have to perform it, or that it has to be presented to an audience. And that's when, like, if I have that strong a deadline, and that's how I get it done. It's like, it will be done for people to consume. Yes. Otherwise, lazy. No.
What's occupying your time right now? I mean, do you feel this like need as an artist to stay creative, or is there something about like just reflecting on?
I mean, it's interesting. I actually have some screenplay work that I'm working on. So, I was supposed to have 2 world premieres that were happening at the same time. Scarlet Letter at South Coast Rep and Emma here in Minneapolis, and I was supposed to be flying back and forth between them. And so I was thinking, like, I don't know when I'm ever going to get this screenplay done. Now suddenly I have a lot of time. Oh no. So I have some screenplay work, and it's been really interesting because some stuff I still have deadlines on because they're due to be produced next year, and right now that looks pretty optimistic. But we've been doing, it's a lot of like cooking and obsessive cleaning, and I've been asking myself a lot, like, okay, if I'm suddenly looking at a spring and a summer I thought was going to be crazy that is suddenly much more luxurious. What do I really, really want to write? And what do I really want to be concentrating on? And yeah, and especially I think anytime you have like a big cultural shift like this, you start thinking, okay, what do I want to say about it? And right now I have to say I could not write a COVID play to save my life because I don't know like where everything's going to land or what I want to say about it because we're so in the middle of it. So some of it is just the same existential freaking out that everyone else is doing, and some is thinking, and and some is deadline.
This period of time was supposed to be, I was literally supposed to be basically in Minneapolis visiting her as Emma was going up, because Amadeus would have closed this past weekend, and I was going to be working on a new solo show, a third solo show that I technically I still have a workshop scheduled in New York for it, but let's face it, that's not happening right away. But so I have that work to do still, and I certainly have the opportunity to do it. It is a funny moment where it's tough to motivate and to know, because it is a moment of reflection and just trying to grapple with what the daily reality is. But you know, I don't want to give away, I can't really give away what it is I'm working on, but it's funny how, even though it isn't the time yet to, you know, it's too soon to write a COVID play, there are things about the piece I'm working on that actually, there are some corollaries with the time period I'm writing about and with what we're going through now. So I'm trying to, you know, I got to keep it vague, but it's interesting because I wasn't necessarily going to explore certain issues that now I think I will as a result of this. I think it would be hard not to, and it would be a nice way to try to, without having to have full perspective on what we're going through now, be able to kind of think about what I'm feeling now and put it into a reflection on the past. That's tricky. I'm not coming right out and describing it in detail, but it's, anyway, it comes into play.
We certainly have days where we're like, today we're just watching Netflix and trying to absorb the shock.
Yeah.
So.
And going grocery shopping is such an epic. I mean, it takes a lot out of us. The mask and washing each item of food. You know,
we're being pretty obsessive.
Takes a few hours, but we're trying to be good.
Yeah.
Are you cooking a lot?
Yes, we're cooking a ton. Yeah, I mean, we could, there's a shelter in place in Minneapolis too. And same as in many, many places, you can get delivery and takeout. But for the moment, we're cooking a ton. Yeah, it's sort of nice. I find it really helpful. Like many theater people, I am a project-based person. So I have a lot of energy. So cooking is a nice way to be like, I'm very concretely following steps to try to get to something. But it's funny because I think we've been in isolation here for 17 days, and I can see hitting a point where it's just going to be like, oh my God, if I chop one more onion, I'm gonna feel like
chop
use
this
knife in a different way. Yeah, so we're cooking a lot. It's been an interesting. It certainly shows everyone, and I'm sure you feel this way too. Like, wow, and I'm sure lots of people feel this way. You can adapt to a lot of change really, really fast.
Yeah,
when you have to.
Things you thought would just be a huge deal, you're sort of like, oh, you can actually roll with it. Yeah.
What you know, I find like theater makers, we so much about what's the next thing we're working on, and this time has given me a chance to kind of look back and reflect a little bit and learn from the past. Can you talk, both of you, about like maybe something in the past recent 2 years that you've been really proud of?
I feel like in the last couple of years, something that's been a big shift, not a shift for me, but something that's become like an important part of how I make things, is making sure that the process is always really kind and respectful to everyone involved, like making sure that to be honest, I just have like a strict no asshole policy. Like I won't work with anyone who no one's talented enough to be abusive, basically. So I just pick my collaborators really carefully, and am really careful to find people who are like good team players as well as like good creators. So something I'm proud of is in the last couple of years, I feel like I can look back on all the rooms and be like, that was a great room. Everyone felt really heard. Everyone felt really respected. Like it was a joyful process, even when it's a crazy play, a sad play or whatever. It's a healthy process. And that I think when I was first starting out, I was, you know, scared to ask that of the room, that there was a certain amount of like, oh, do I have to put up with certain sorts of behavior because it has like a good product? And now I'm very much like, no, theater processes really need to be healthy because we are workplaces and we need to respect each other. So something I'm proud of is I can look back on all my rooms in the last 2 years and be like, it was healthy. Everyone was respected, everyone was heard, and everyone, I feel like something I've also been reflecting on as I think about this big unasked for pause in the American theater experience is I keep on being like, okay, how do I want the theater to be reborn, and how can I be a part of that? Because we will have to sort of rebirth ourselves, and that's something that's really important to me, is being like making sure that the processes are really healthy too, as well as obviously you always want to create a great like end result. But I think if you have a healthy, joyous, respectful process, you can have a good end result. So that's my pretty proud of it.
I mean, not to say ditto, but I mean, I would say the same because, you know, in the last couple of years, I've started doing a lot more directing. And so I'm, you know, as you know, you're in charge of so many more decisions, and there's so many more balls in the air, and you're responsible for the experience of so many other people, as opposed to being an actor and just saying like, well, I'm responsible for what I can do here, and you try to be a kind collaborator and this and that, and be helpful to people, but you can only really control one element of it. When you're a director, everything's put before you, and those decisions that you make will dictate whether people are going to be feel happy and feel like they've been allowed to do their best work and put their best foot forward. And all I can say is it feels like, you know, the last 2 years I've had a number of experiences kind of behind the table, so to speak, and it's and I've been very proud of the end results of all of them, but I've been most proud of feeling like that people felt like very, very happy with not only the work that we did, but the experience. Like they stay bonded, and I think I feel happy that I could make a place for them to feel comfortable and joyous, and to look back on happily, as opposed to, well, I got my insurance weeks out of that, but you know what I mean, like for them to be like, that was special and I enjoyed it, and, you know. So trying to learn how to be a good leader for people in the industry going forward. That's where I'm at.
Do you have like a trick, both of you, because you've worked with each other as writer, actor, director, actor, you know, is there a trick that you have to, like, so it doesn't become pillow talk, or is pillow talk a good thing? I mean, what is...
That's good.
Well, we started out as friends, so I think like in the way the basis of our friendship as well as our partnership is helpful. But also I think we try really hard when we're in a room together as professionals, we try really hard to just treat each other like coworkers, like to kind of have a sort of personality divide and treat each other not like, it's not that we're not affectionate with each other and everyone in the room generally knows we're together, but we try to be just as respectful and professional with each other as we would be with anyone else. Because the last thing anyone wants to do is work with a couple that's fighting with each other. Yeah. So we're very we try to treat each other as well as we treat
and you can't,
anyone else, and so we like treat each other like coworkers and professionals.
And you can't have different rules for the rules have to be the same for everybody else in the room.
Yeah.
The only time it was the most interesting kind of tricky thing was last year when I was directing. We both, the world premiere of Pride and Prejudice, of her Pride and Prejudice, we acted opposite each other.
We were Lizzie and Darcy.
And then we did another production of it at Syracuse State. Right. So I was directing it, and Kate was, not only was I directing her play, one of her plays for the first time, but she was in it as well. So I was directing her as an actor.
Yes, but
you were Lydia that time?
I played Lydia and Lady Catherine, A, because they're just fun, but B, I was like, I have to switch roles or you'll never be able to, what will you be able to, like, you won't be able to direct me because I played it for like 9 months and I'll be.
I could try, but she would do what she wanted
like
to do.
Stubborn, so I was like,
then it would be like, so you're saying when we did it together for 6 months, you didn't like that choice?
I'm not that big of a thing, but I wanted to create the path of least resistance. So I was like, okay, I'm going to switch. And it actually worked out great. But it was very much because we're friends. We could, and we would be like, and we would sidebar. We would be like.
We would have to, yeah.
Yeah, and when I'm in my own stuff, I'm very much, in Ghostbusters, there's like Dana and Zool. I'm like, the playwright's Dana and the actor is Zool. And because at some point there is no Dana, there is only Zool. And I say that to all my directors because I'm like, at some point, like, you need to be able to give me direction as an actor, but and the playwright relationship is different. So we would have a side conversation, not as a married couple. And also, I would be like, do you want to talk to Dana or Zool? So it was there were a lot of personalities.
But it's just different because, if I'm just directing her in a play, that's one thing. I'm the director, she's the actor, and that's it. But then you do have that other layer that any director who directs her in her own work has to negotiate, like how the director's dealing with the playwright versus the actor. But then it can't help but the fact that you're a couple. It's just many. It's the turducken of theatrical. It's like many layers.
Experience, and we had no conflict. Thank God.
No, we had like two. I think the whole time we had like 2 little sidebars where it was. And when I say sidebar, meaning like it was clear that it was like we feel different ways about this, and we weren't going to have the discussion in front of the cast. Because whether that would be the same if we weren't in a relationship and she was the writer and I was the director, we might still have done that sidebar. But it feels almost more important when you have a personal relationship to really make it like, okay, well, when they're on a 5, we'll talk about this over here, because you don't want people starting to read into something as like a tension that's going to like carry over into other aspects of our relationship.
As a playwright too, I also feel like you're going to have times where you and the director have differing opinions about stuff, but you have to trust your collaborator that they are the director and they're bringing a new perspective. So you just play around.
She's incredibly good about that. I mean, she is with all directors, but for me to do it, a piece that had already been. Where we had already done it, and you kind of figure like,
and we knew it really well.
Yeah, you know it well, and you think like, well, and you live with it so long that you might be like, I really think it should be this way. But no, it was great, and it was actually very liberating, very fun process. So now we've worked together several different. I've been an actor in things she's written with her. I've been her director for plays that I've written, then I've directed her in plays she's written. So we kind of, we're trying to fill out all the little boxes. So we can,
But you never get to the point where you're like, oh, I disagree with that note. I'm the writer. I'm just going to change the line.
No, that would be like an abuse of power. No, that would be evil. I'm more often like let me try to do this thing that is vaguely impossible, and then if I fail, then everyone will know it's my fault. I'm much more of a masochist, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm much more like, I don't actually know French, but maybe I'll try to learn French for this, which is just like every time I do that, I'm like, why?
That is a temptation, though, right? To like be like, I'm not making this work, so maybe I can fix. Well, yeah. Well, then you have to do it for everybody. You know what I mean? If you're like when doing Cyrano, right? I directed it the first time, and then acting in it the second time. Sure, there are moments where you're like, oh God, I wrote that, but I don't really like saying it. So I'll like, let me figure out what sounds better, feels better for me as an actor. Can't do that because then the other actors are like, hey, I'd like to feel better.
I will say when you're in your own work, you got to be the first off book, and you better get it perfect. Because if everyone else is gonna be like, I'm not doing it right, you're not doing it right. So you got to be you got to be really
set the bar.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. There were so many things because this was the first time, like I said, I've written my solo shows, The Dork Night, and I have, and those are, and that's all me the whole time or whatever. But Cyrano was the first time I had written something where I was really doing what she does with her work, where she writes this play for an ensemble and then she's a part in it, and having that experience of being in my own work, but being responsible to all these other people on the stage with me. And she kept saying, she said so many times, she's like, oh, I'm so happy you're going through this now for the first time. Now you know what I've been feeling like for all these years. And I was like, yeah, you're right, honey. You're right. That is, it's all these new little negotiations with yourself, just like how you behave in the room, how you are a leader in the room in a different way, how quickly you get off book for your own stuff, how you don't hold yourself to a different standard that you hold your castmates to. Yeah, it was very interesting. So, but I had also been witnessing her and working alongside her in these situations for so long that I had already learned so much from her and took that into that experience. But yeah.
What do you think in these moments? Why do you think theater matters? It's a hard question.
To be honest, you would think that this would be an existential moment, like why theater? But actually, it's made me value theater more than ever because my God, like to have a catharsis of a whole community together in a room, which is why theater was invented, to have connection in a way that, and thank God for like Netflix and the movies right now, but there's something about when you're sitting next to someone or you're watching someone on stage and all the heartbeats in the room synchronize, which they've shown happen, which brings the whole community together and is this moment of pure connection. And in this moment when I just desperately miss connection, I miss my family and my loved ones and my friends and being out in society, that I'm like, oh my God, theater feels like it matters more than ever. And when we do come back, because Shakespeare's theater came back from the plague, like people come back, theater comes back from wars, it will come back. I just feel like we're going to need it more than ever because we're being taught now how important that in-person connection is for both the community and us personally. And I have him here, so I'm not even like alone, and I'm just every day desperate to have that connection.
Yeah, I think there's a theory people worry like, well, is this the end of it? Will it not come back? And I think it definitely will. Nobody can predict exactly how and when, but I think it's that need to connect en masse like that in a communal, kind of gathering that is going to be, we just won't be able to, but we'll find a way back to it, and it'll be all the more potent.
Yeah, it's definitely like an interesting time to be living through, but I always feel like, isn't it funny that people are always predicting the death of the theater, and the theater just like, we will not die, but I feel like we'll need our communities will need it, and we'll need it more than we ever.
Yeah, the most incredible things I've experienced as an audience member, I think, have been the public theaters, the public works, the Shakespeare, the Shakespeare in the Park each summer when they have the years when they have the production that is. This past year it was Hercules, but there was this beautiful As You Like It a couple of years ago, and it's so incredible because it's a huge audience and it's a beautiful experience, but also that all those people on stage, so many of them are non-actors and amateurs and professionals, and it's such a community coming together on stage to perform for you, and then everyone in the audience feels like part of that community too, and it is just, it's so emotionally, it's so unlike any other play that I've been to, but I have a feeling that when we come back, every play is going to feel like that, because there'll be this share, you know what I mean? At least for a while, you know, at least it'll be like that feeling of, it won't be so much us and them, like, there are those professionals who are putting on this thing, and I'm going to view it like this. And, you know, it's going to be like, wow, we get to do it. Wow, you're doing this for us, and we're here to be here for you. And I think they're all going to feel like those kinds of special community projects.
My hope is when we come back, like, that it'll feel less like, I don't know, that we're sort of like trying to rebuild something in exactly the same way, and more like we're trying to kick the doors in and let all the kick the doors down and let all the people in. Like, that we can actually, if we're being forced to take this pause, which is really devastating to so many people in our business and everyone's business, that maybe we can come back with a stronger idea of like why we're doing it and what we want to do. I hope.
Yeah, me too. How do you think, what do you think will happen when the doors reopen? I mean, you talked about this event of community and how exciting that will be. Do you think that there will be other impacts?
I mean, it's just such early days. It's hard to know. I do.
When we even.
I fear existentially for the future of a lot of theater companies, which is like a tragedy. Not to mention artists, staff members, and the whole country, the economy as a whole. And that's even once we get, I mean, and these were absolutely the right decisions to make. We had to protect people. It's worth it if it saves any lives at all, which I think it will. I guess I just feel like, you know, we will need to reconnect, because I think we're going to come out of this like pretty traumatized, actually. And I think we'll need to re-examine like how theaters can build up their audiences, how we can make theater more accessible to everyone, because I do think people are going to be suffering economically from this for a while. I think we're going to be needing to make sure that we are creating stories that do speak to everyone, that we don't just sort of like run back to some perceived safety of some status quo from 50 years ago. And there's going to be a lot of fear, because there's a lot of existential fear. I think it all depends on how long things are shut down. I certainly have fear, but I feel like we have to try to, because when eventually we are sort of all allowed out again, people will want to be in rooms together so much and want to support so much, that we have to create work that's worthy of that support, and also that speaks to the moment that we'll be in as much as we can. I mean, I think like as artists and as patrons of the arts, we're trying to push the culture forward always. And so at the end of a big, huge crisis like this, which is the biggest health crisis in 100 years, arguably, we're going to need to step up and try to be ethical leaders of that movement, all of us, including patrons. You know,
it's interesting. That, I mean, it will be like that'll be the joyful dam burst at the end of all of this. But
like Shakespeare, you know, when he came back. Yeah.
But you do fear that it's, you know, I think it will be. It's hard because it is, you know, I feel like theater sports, anything that is like a really large group coming together to experience. That's going to be the kind of last piece in the puzzle. I fear, you know, because that's the thing that people are going to be most reticent about, like putting themselves into that situation. So I think there will, you know, that'll come with a feeling of safety, you know, too. And I think that, but hopefully that will also mean, like I said, that it's a real explosion of joy, because when everybody feels like they can give themselves over to that, it will hopefully be without like fear and
the first night you can go to like a restaurant and sit, have a glass of wine, and go to a show, or the first rehearsal of a show. I think it's just like that.
Be all these big, moments, you know, like weeping moments. Of like, for everybody, all these small little things, you know, kids being able to go back to school and people being able to go back to see family and coworkers. It's crazy. But, and then to have that on a large scale with like a large gathering of hundreds of people and some, you know, not always that large, but, you know, any kind of communal event is going to be really
huge.
Yeah. I had a patron send me an email that said, she said, I never knew how much I would miss dialogue with strangers, talking about things that weren't of me, weren't about themselves. And I think that it's so powerful that theater can create dialogue.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. I feel like theater is one of the few places where now you still go into a room and you have no idea, the person sitting next to you, you have no idea what their background is. They might come from completely, it's even if when you go to church, like, you know, or you go to whatever, synagogue or whatever, you like, often people have sort of the same creed or belief system or somewhere on that spectrum. But theater, you have no idea where they're coming from, although there is a certain leaning. But a whole community can come together and have a cathartic experience and get into difficult dialogue sometimes based on one story. And we're also going to need that for sure. I always thought I was kind of like, you know, I when I'm not in a show, I'm like often at home, like writing. And so I was like, oh, how much interaction do I need on a given day? And now I have to say, when we do our once weekly socially distanced grocery store trip, I'm like, hi, stranger, hi, how's your life?
Yeah.
What are you doing? You know, you just, it's a human need. We miss
people waving. People wave to each other in cars now. I mean, people are they want to connect them.
And it's like, theater, it's so interesting because it's like it's a family experience quite often. It's very loving or very tight knit and from within it. And I also feel like in theater audiences have relationships to theaters quite often and personal relationships. So to not have that right now is like a real loss.
It's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of things too. The fact that we all will have had this shared experience, which you know, so many people, like you say, that you know, you sit down and everybody's different and has different backgrounds, and we all do. But this equalizer of all having to have behaved a certain way and acted a certain way and distanced ourselves from friends and loved ones and not had work and had to stand on a line to get groceries. I mean, you know, all these things that will have brought us together in a way when we come back to tell stories together and interact together. That's just really, everybody will still have been from different walks of life, but a shared experience like that is I mean, we've never experienced it on this level.
I mean, like, they're like, you know, Sophocles wrote, and there were big plagues that killed like 25% of its population. And he wrote, like, this is part of, in a weird way, as theater artists, our artistic legacy is rebuilding after something really traumatic and helping the community heal. And when I think of it that way, it actually helps me because it may be painful, but I'm like, oh, in a weird way, we are walking in our, you know, forebear steps, and it is up to us to figure out how we will do that. as citizens, and artists and everything else, you know, that we might as well try to build the world we want now, since the world we built is like shaking a little bit. So we might as well try to build like the world we really would love to build.
Mm. Could you make 3 we statements about including yourself with other theater makers?
Oh, can you say? What? Can you explain that?
like trying to be in solidarity with other people right now. I think a lot of people watching this are wanting to feel at home or a part of the big tapestry of theater makers.
Yeah.
Could you say like just a few we statements, including yourself, like we need to be, or we are resilient because, or
we are more resilient than we think. We will come through this. It is part of our artistic legacy, and it is part of our duty as artistic citizens to try to give shape to this crisis and tragedy, however long it takes us. And we're all in it together. We're all in it together. This is, as Jason said, the great equalizer. There is no one who is not affected by this. So the community is what makes, and catharsis is what makes theater great. And we will find a way to have a catharsis through this and to create catharsis for our community. Jason.
Yeah, I think you said like 6, so I don't really need to say 3. It was like 4.5, I think. But no, I mean I can't top any of that. But no, we can't top any of that. No, but I mean, I think we all have to be kind to ourselves and understand that it's okay to be afraid and to be worried and to be nervous, but not to lose hope and not to lose our sense of humor if we can. I think that's very important for all of us. And yeah, I mean, what Kate said, we will get through it, and we will get through it together. And we also, harkening back to what you said, we will be, artists are always the ones who kind of are the reflection upon these times of stress and tumult. And I think that we will be, to take heart in knowing that we will be, in some ways, the light at the end of the tunnel, the illuminating light that will look back on this and make sense of it. Even though we don't know exactly when that will be or how that will take shape, that's our standard to bear.
Beautiful. My final. My final.
Gotta work hard to like follow her in some of these things. It's very difficult. I sit there. I'm like, that's wonderful. It's wonderful. Jesus, what do I say? Oh, good God.
Who would you invite to dinner if you could invite anyone right now?
Oh.
And not social distance.
You can invite anyone.
Can we just have like a big Thanksgiving and have everyone?
Our families.
Our families.
We've got all our wedding pictures back this week, and they're the most gorgeous wedding pictures.
Oh.
And it made it, it was just 2 months ago we got married, and just like, we would be weeping under any circumstances.
But we were like, to see ourselves hugging, like, yeah, I to hugging people. I just would love, like, those, like when you're a kid, you have like the school cafeteria and everyone's at a million tables. That's such a cheating answer, but I just would like everyone.
But that
I
question,
just want to hug everyone.
That question gets asked all the time. I mean, not all the time. I didn't mean to say it like that, but I mean, that question's boring. No, I mean, like, who could you, if you could have a dinner with anybody, right? Who would be at your table? Like, and I'm like, Jack Nicholson, William Shakespeare, and Jesus. And I'm like, there's my answer. And now you said it, and the first thing I thought was like, oh, my grandma. and my mom and my niece and Kate's mom, and you know, and it's the people that you've always had your dinners with, right? That's who you would like to have your dinner with now. So I'm gonna cry. So don't keep asking.
Yeah, we all miss it. Just it's like you know, any dinner with people. Oh, Thanksgiving. I just want Thanksgiving. Maybe it'll all be over by Thanksgiving. We can just rolling Thanksgivings.
Cuomo. I want to have dinner with Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
He rocks. He's keeping us sane. Anyway.
Well, let's open this up to anyone watching if they want to ask a few questions. There's one here from someone who's graduating from a conservatory as an actor. The question is, do you have advice for young audiences, for young artists that are graduating or entering the field right now?
Oh, first of all, I'm so sorry that I assume your graduation and if you have a showcase that is disrupted, and I just want to say my heart goes out to you. The good news is it will come back, and it is always sort of a turbulent time to enter this field. Like, you know, there's never a time where it's like everything, here's your check, kid. Like, it's always a little bit crazy to enter this field, but the field is always looking for passionate young people with something to say. So, you know, I would say, like, keep believing, like, keep working on your skills in your social distance fashion. Like, now's a great time to work on making your own work, which is always helpful because you'll have lots of time to reflect and work on things. Do a Zoom reading with your friends, but, you know that the whole industry is on pause. So for you to be on pause right now when you're graduating is you are not being held back. You are in exactly the same place everyone else is. So you're not starting late. Everyone's starting at the same place after this. So you're right on track. My heart goes out to you because I know it's a turbulent time, and I'm sure my thoughts. I know some young artists who have had, you know, their showcases taken away or their graduation, and it's heartbreaking. So, but you are not starting behind. The gun is going to go off, and we're all going to start again.
I think it's the same thing. It's not specific to this moment in time. It's what I would say to anybody, which is to really embrace yourself, embrace who you are, embrace your quirks, the things that make you uniquely yourself, and don't worry about. I think there was a time when there was an image of what it was to be a successful theater actor or a television actor or a film actor, and there were things that everybody was trying to make themselves become, and you know, so that they could fit into a certain kind of box. And I think that's a thing of the past. I think it's partly because of how much more diversity there is in our field and in all the performing arts, and also just the fact that there's, you know, so much more. There's so much more. I mean, right now there's not, but so much more theater being made, and so many more avenues for content, and whether it's on television or online or whatever, it's just, there's so much room for so many stories and so many different kinds of people to tell those stories that I don't think, it's not to say you're not working on your skills and that you don't want to be an utter chameleon like the next Daniel Day-Lewis and you're able to do everything and anything, but that there's also great value in just finding what you specifically can bring to the work that is completely uniquely you, and that this maybe is a wonderful time to be able to sit and reflect on it, because you are off of the, you're not in that kind of rat race, or not like, okay, well, this is where I am now and this is where I've got to get, and I'm competing with everyone else to, like, you're jockeying for some sort of position or perceived position. That's not where we're at right now. So everybody has to sit and take a breath and think about who they are and what they want and what they want to be and what they want to see for themselves.
when I was just starting out too, I think I thought like people who were older or more established like had stuff figured out and would not feel doubt and uncertainty. But everyone I know feels doubt and uncertainty, even people who are very big deals and have crazy career plaudits. And everyone right now is feeling doubt and uncertainty for sure. So it's again, it's a great equalizer. Like know that it's you are in some ways entering a field where everyone's going to be very, very sympathetic to like, wow, we are all sort of starting again.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's other questions. A lot of comments about your lovely conversation.
No question.
There's one at the beginning. Do you recommend exploring generative role, writing or producing for actors to explore the empowerment you've initially talked about?
I think like there's I think there's never much to be lost in like learning how to do a lot of things. I think it increases your respect for other people. Nothing teaches you how amazing choreographers are by your own bad choreography. I'm just making up an example. I think it makes you a better, more well-rounded artist. And I think it's always really important to fling yourself towards fear. So if you keep on doing the thing that you think, if you're only doing the thing you're most confident about all the time, then you're probably not going to grow. And if you're willing to kind of make a fool of yourself, it's good. And, you know, all the skills, like, I've never directed because I'd be terrible at it, but I guess I like, I've produced and I've been an actor and a writer, and I feel like all of those have taught me valuable skills that feed each other. And there are things that I would love to do in the future that I feel like I should, because that fear will help me.
Yeah, I think there's no, I think we put so much stock in, as actors, in pleasing other people and getting the job and doing it right, and then and finding, and that we, because it's the way it's structured, you know, you're at the mercy of everybody else, and so your value is placed in what opportunity is offered to you, and what and how other people see you, and by writing something or directing something of your own, or trying to get people together to produce something, you take those reins into your own hands, and I think there's a pride that comes with that, and a satisfaction that comes with that, even on the smallest of scales, and even if it's not, you know, you're not busting the bank wide open, you know, with your earnings per se. I think the act of trying to create something, take a more generative, that was the word you used, right? I mean, that to create your own work on whatever level is very, very empowering and very satisfying. And so I think it's just a great exercise. I think it's just great for people to feel like they've made a thing, and that they didn't have to be totally dependent on others to get there. I think it's a great, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's that's what I find.
I always say making a play is better than making a bomb. So like, you know, like building it. So like, you know, you like try to write or design or whatever, act a play, and it's bad. It's like you learn something, whereas there are many more destructive things you can do in the world. I like that I put it like a choice. Like it's like
Bomb or play.
Or play.
Some plays are bombs, so there you go. That's,
yes.
Sometimes you're making both
at the same
time, whether you want to or not. No, I just no. I think it's very liberating. It's very liberating, and I think it then feeds you. I think what you gain from that, then you take that energy and that kind of, there's a confidence that comes with that that you carry with you into your next audition or your next rehearsal as an actor. Yeah, I think it's healthy for the soul.
We have a question about what brings you joy and gives you passion in adaptations.
Oh, well, I really want to, I do love the classics. There's a reason why we keep on coming back to them over and over again, because they do deal with universal themes. And I also like bringing a radical spin to the classics, because I feel like if our stories, our classics, are cultural touchstones for us. They teach us about ourselves. So if I say so-and-so's a vampire, you have an understanding of what that means in your mind right away, and it helps shapes your story about that person. So if we can reshape old stories to make them more feminist, inclusive, democratic, we can actually, I do believe we can reshape our culture and reshape ourselves. If we can change who the heroes of our stories are, if we can change our concept of what sort of serious theater adaptation is, then we can bust down the doors, as I was talking about, and especially let young people into the theater, make theater more inclusive, make theater more democratic. So the joy I get out of it is trying to bring a completely new lens to old stories and surprise people. My favorite theater that I go to is when I see something and I'm like, wow, I came in expecting one thing and I saw a completely different thing, and it changed my perspective and it changed my mind and it gave me empathy. So, and the classics are great vehicle to do that, because people come in with a very preconceived idea of what things are. So if you can shake them out of it, you can shake them out of telling the same stories to themselves all the time about themselves or about other people, but also telling the same stories culturally all the time. So that, for me, as a feminist and as someone who's very passionate about equity, is really exciting. And then also, I love making them specifically theatrical. So I like making them pieces of theater that can stand on their own, and that people who think like, oh, Cygnet's Pride and Prejudice, directed by Robbie, is a really great example. Like people came in expecting one thing and they saw a completely different thing, and thanks to your brilliant production. And that is really exciting to me, because it expands people's minds about their relationship to the classics, but also their relationship to what is like a classic story and who should be featured in the same. So that's what's exciting to me about them. And I really try with everyone I do to ask, what does it activate in me, and what do I think it's saying about society now? So it'll be really interesting to see what like classic I feel like should be repurposed in the wake of this, because again, I don't have perspective on this right now, so I don't really know. And maybe it'll be a new play, or maybe it'll be a classic, but I don't know.
There was a few questions. One was really beautiful that I did want to hear, is your answer to what was going through your mind when Jason, you saw Kate walk down the aisle?
Oh, I was oh God, do you see it?
I see it now.
Yeah. What was going through my mind was, this is perfect, she's perfect, and it was exactly how I imagined it. And yeah, it was just, I mean, we were very lucky. Our wedding was it was a perfect day. We kept saying afterwards, we were like, oh my God, nothing went wrong. Everything. We were preparing ourselves. We were like, something's gonna go wrong. This is what happened at my sister's wedding. This is what happened. You know, something's gonna go wrong. The DJ's gonna play the wrong thing. Somebody's gonna grab the microphone and make a speech that's not supposed to make a speech. No, none of that. It was perfect. But when she came down the aisle, it was just. I think in a way it was like this. It was like this exhalation. It was just. I'm home. She's here, and this is happening, and we're home. So you know, but yeah, it was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
And I'm lucky. That's what I was thinking. Look how lucky I am.
Well, I hope to be having a margarita with both of you.
Oh,
I know.
we miss you.
Miss you.
Yeah.
We'll do prostitute play together. So.
Yay! We're so excited.
Can't wait.
Oh, so much love to you, my friend.
Yeah. Love you both.
Stay safe. Stay well.
Touch. You too.
Everyone, stay well.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for doing this.
Of course, our pleasure.
It was a delight.
Bye.
Bye.